up, guys? ShiShi here, back with another episode of ShiShi Meditations. And I just returned back to New York from Coachella Music Festival, which was a super inspiring experience to get to see so many artists, you know, doing what they love, living their dream on pretty much the biggest festival stage in the United States and one of the biggest festival stages in the world. You know, for me as an aspiring artist and aspiring creative person, it was really eye-opening, and I was fortunate enough to actually get to meet a couple of the artists that were playing the festival. And I wanted to just shoot a quick video about what's been on my mind since returning home yesterday from California. And this is kind of the biggest takeaway that that I got from talking to a couple of the artists that I got to speak to before their sets. So, you know, one of the people I got to meet was San Holo. I spoke to him for a little bit. If you're an electronic music fan, you might know about him. And another person I got to meet was Quix, and also briefly spoke to Drew from the Chainsmokers. And the consistent thread that kept coming up when I was talking to these guys and just, you know, kind of asking them, you know, how does it feel to finally be doing this as a career? You know, if you're playing at a place like Coachella, or if you're even there as an artist, then it's kind of like a stamp of approval. Like, you're really validated as a musician and as a creative person, and you've really cracked that upper echelon of artists who are doing this for a living and really, you know, really doing it professionally, which is my goal. So the biggest thing that I kept noticing from their answers was it just takes a lot of time, and it takes a level of patience that, you know, most people, well, I don't want to say most people, but I think there's this misconception that the people who make it are either super lucky, or they're in the right place at the right time, or, you know, they just have like natural talent, God-given talent that can't be taught. And there definitely is a lot of that to a degree, but the biggest thing that pretty much everyone I spoke to who was playing the festival told me was, you just got to be incredibly patient and just stick it out and just grind it out. Not week after week, not month after month, but year after year, sometimes decade after decade, to get to the point where you are really a master of your craft. And as artists, you know, what I consider to be a master of your craft, if you're an artist, if you're a musical artist, if you're a painter, any sort of person who is creating art, is you're a master of expressing an emotion authentically and being able to elicit that emotion in other people through whichever medium that you might be doing it, you know, whether it's music or art or filmmaking or whatever it might be. And so, you know, the biggest thing that almost everybody kept saying to me was, hey man, like, you got to just keep sticking with it and keep grinding every single day. And just the people that end up making it are oftentimes just the ones that, obviously they have talent, obviously they have hard work. Those are kind of like table stakes. If you don't have those, you're not really even in the race. But they're the ones that were just the most patient and just didn't give up and didn't let the negative voices either in their environment or within themselves affect them and convince them that they didn't have what it took somehow. And, you know, one of the really crazy cool examples of that was, I was speaking to San Holo, who is from Europe. He's a European electronic artist and DJ, and he told me that, you know, he was just grinding, making all these songs, and nothing was really happening. And he was teaching guitar on the side to make a living, and he pretty much was like, you know, he was ready to just kind of not give up making music, but give up pursuing it at the level that he had been pursuing it, and just become a guitar teacher. And he said, I'm so happy that I didn't do that, you know, that I just stuck it out for the next 6 months, because in that next 6 months he put out some remixes and they picked up a ton of steam online, and that's kind of what kicked everything off for him. And you know, another artist that I spoke to was Quix, really dope, New Zealand based electronic artist, makes incredible, just super unique music. And he told me, he kind of asked me, he was like, so like, what are your goals as an artist? Like, what do you want to do? And I was like, well, honestly, man, and this is like right after he had played, or the day after he had played his set, and I was like, honestly, like, what you just did is like my goal, like to be able to come to a marquee premier music festival like Coachella and play it and have fans that know my songs and know who I am and are showing up for me, supporting me, and to be able to make a living. And and I told him, you know, I've had some little successes, and I'm doing my thing, and I'm doing well, and I'm working hard and everything, but I think realistically it's probably going to be like another 2 years before I can really consider playing Coachella a possibility. And that's kind of my own personal, realistic kind of assessment of where I'm at and where I need to be. But he told me something. He said, you know, that might be true. You might be right about that. But sometimes what you think could happen in 2 years can happen in 2 months. And sometimes it can happen in 5 years or 10 years. And he basically told me, you know, I had like a 1-year plan, a 2-year plan, and I pretty much put out one song, and then very quickly things started happening for me. And he said, you know, we started talking about how a lot of people in the music industry and creative industries in general, whether it's acting or pretty much anything that lends itself to like some sort of celebrity, with the exception of like of sports, there's kind of this perception that, oh, like this person is like a one-hit wonder, like they just blew up out of nowhere. And what people don't often realize is to get that hit song or whatever, you know, or to get that big break or that first festival show or whatever it might be, there are years and years and years behind that of work that was done behind the scenes, you know, of hard decisions and sacrifices to not go out and stay at home and not party and not go to one of your best friend's weddings because you need to stay home and make music that weekend. And, you know, I'm really fortunate that I even get to go to things like Coachella and get to do stuff like that. But, you know, those are decisions that I've made in the past year. And they've been tough, but I just make them knowing that I'm working towards a bigger goal in the future. And I was just really moved by talking to these people who were already where I wanted to be, and how pretty much everybody said the same thing, which is just, you need to cultivate an insane level of patience, and an insane level of clarity about what your vision is and what your goal is. Because if you don't have a super, super strong, clear vision of where you're trying to go and a realistic assessment of honestly, realistically, how long it's going to take and how much work it's going to take, then you just will never be able to cultivate the discipline to consistently work at it every day. And so, yeah, I just kind of wanted to make a video about that. And I think it applies to pretty much any career. And the funny thing is that, you know, in pretty much every other, or in many careers, you know, whether more traditional career paths, such as being a doctor is a great example. So if you want to be a doctor, you have to study like medicine for 8 years, and then you become a doctor, and then you, even after that, you can specialize in different things and get different certifications and what have you. And you know, if you want to be like the CEO of a company, right? Whatever field, if you want to master it, it takes years. It literally takes years, sometimes decades to master. And I think with things like music and art and film and acting, because there's this kind of like X factor of talent, it's harder to just see the straight line forward of like, well, if I put in this many hours, then I'm going to get this much better at this thing. Because there's kind of this like nebulous, like, oh, well, some people have it, some people aren't creative. You know, there's kind of that perception in society, whereas, you know, whereas with something like medicine, there's a general perception that as long as you're relative, you know, smart enough at a baseline level, if you just go to school and put in the work and work your ass off, like you can get through it and eventually, you know, succeed in that field. And I think the hard thing with music is that there isn't really a lot of space for people who are mediocre at what they do in terms of artists. Because like, in order to make a living as an artist, you need to emotionally move people enough that they want to invest in you through going to your shows and buying tickets to your concerts or buying your merchandise or buying your music or whatever it might be. And, you know, to master something like that, it's very nebulous. So it's kind of hard to quantify and put into terms. But either like you make music that has a really strong impact on people or you don't. Like it's pretty black and white, as opposed to like, you know, back when I had a more like 9-to-5 job. I won't disclose the industry or company, but you know, I was like decent at it, but I wasn't like amazing at it, and I wasn't super into it. I definitely wasn't like a superstar at it, but I was good enough that like they weren't gonna fire me, you know. And I feel like that kind of like level of, yeah, like I can do this, and you know, maybe I'll even get promoted and just make a career out of this. It doesn't really work in things like music and art, which is why I feel like you see people who do have these on the external surface, it's like they blew up overnight. But what people don't realize is that visibility is the tip of the iceberg, and below that iceberg is, you know, hours and weeks and months and years of sacrifice and working hard at your craft. So yeah, so I just want to make that quick video, and you know, I hope this little rant just kind of like inspires anybody else who's doing something creative, or musical or artistic or entrepreneurial even too, is another great example, to just really prioritize their vision and really try to cultivate an almost pretty extraordinary level of patience. I feel like is what it really takes, in combination with the hard work and talent, to get to where you want to be in something entrepreneurial. So with that, peace out, and I will see you guys soon.